We're glad you're here to talk about Daniel Isn't Real because this movie needs to be discussed. Fans have never seen you in a role like this before, and it looks like there's a lot going on beneath the surface here. So walk us through what you can about your character and about this story.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for having me. It's always great to be back here and to be here with you guys. And yeah, I mean, this movie, like you said, I think it's a great that it came out. It needed to come out. I mean, it's kind of a horror genre film, but it's a film that really talks about other topics, such as, you know, toxic masculinity, mental health, both of which are issues that are very pertinent to today, to society today. And, you know, this film, Daniel Isn't Real, uses film as a medium to kind of express those topics and bring it to light and to the mass audience. So I'm really proud of it, and I'm you know, excited for you guys all to see it. So
the trailer alone leaves us with many questions, but first off, let's just get in on some of the math equations that we see drawn on you in the classroom scene. Is that real, or is it just nonsense numbers and symbols? Who drew that?
You know, the wardrobe or makeup department did it, but it took a while. I mean, they didn't just draw it. There were tattoos, like a tattoo specialist person comes in and you know, puts it all over. And at first it was just kind of like, I took off the shirt and showed my shoulder, and then of course the director was like, yeah, well, let's take the shirt off and do it. So, you know, an hour later of wardrobe stuff everywhere. That's what happened. And yeah.
So Daniel is an imaginary.
I don't know if the equations were real or numbers were real.
Someone on the internet will figure that out. I'm sure.
It'll be on Reddit tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So Daniel is an imaginary friend of sorts who comes back, but it seems like there's some sinister ulterior motives here.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when people say Daniel is this imaginary friend, I think that that's something that's so, you know, pertinent to the idea of mental health. It's like, to outsiders, to bystanders, he's no one. He's an imaginary friend. But to, you know, Luke's character, to Miles Robbins, he's a very, you know, forced dialogue in his mind. He's really there.
He sees him. He hears him. It's the whole thing.
He's right there always. And I think that's something that mental health is that you never know, you know, who's experienced it, who's going through it, and how real it is to that person. And while they're saying, oh, I have this voice in my head, you know, and no one's believing him or anything like that, and to other people, that person's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And why is Daniel coming back now?
Daniel's coming back because he's here to help Luke. And that's, again, what this movie talks about is, you know, when the audience, when Daniel first comes back and you see him kind of helping him, it's through cheating on tests. It's through helping getting with women, sleeping with women. It's helping, you know, drinking alcohol, having fun, getting into fistfights, everything that this character is making Luke believe he's back and he's acting as though he's a man finally and he's enjoying life. All these things are toxic masculinity, right? They're things that are horrible, but to the audience and to the character, he's finally there helping him. And then as the movie progresses, you see how crazy Daniel is and how twisted and menacing he is, and makes him do all these terrible things. But you know, initially he's there to warp him into the idea that he's helping him.
So these coping mechanisms don't necessarily turn out to be productive down the line.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how much freedom did you have when crafting this character? Were you able to just sort of go off the rails, or working with the director to create a specific vision?
Yeah, I definitely worked with the director. But something that was really, you know, awesome about this, and when I had talked with Adam and kind of some of the filmmakers, was you know, I said, look, guys, if we do this, like, I want this to be totally different. I don't want it to be Patrick Schwarzenegger comes in and just, you know, kind of gets to play around. I want it to be like, I don't want people to recognize me from the role. I don't want, you know, I want this character to be something that's completely different. And that's the reason why I really wanted to do it, was I got to play a character that was completely polar opposite from anything I'd done previously, and it allowed me to kind of spread acting wings and to play something that I wasn't. And they were totally on par with that. And, you know, day one when we got there, we dyed my hair completely black and dyed my eyebrows, and the makeup people gave me eyeshadow and stuff like that. And he allowed me to create this Pinterest board for my wardrobe and clothing, and kind of go out with the costume designer and buy clothes. And she actually handmade a bunch of different items for Daniel. And, you know, I always tell this story. One of the funniest things was, because I wanted to see what it felt like to be this new character and stuff like that. So during rehearsals, we had a week and a half of rehearsals, but we did all the hair, makeup, everything day one. So I have a morning routine of every morning I wake up early, I go to the coffee shop and I do some work. And so I wanted to go do the work in journaling as Daniel. And so we had this mesh tank top with my nipples poking through and these purple foggy glasses and my hair slicked back.
So not Patrick.
Yeah, not Patrick, and this skin tight leather jacket and pants and these big boots. And I went to the Starbucks in Manhattan. And just went and did my normal routine of getting coffee, went there and worked, and I journaled as Daniel and just looked around and wanted to see how people were observing me, from being in the coffee line at Starbucks to sitting down, and the different looks that I was getting and people kind of just like looking at me with my wardrobe. And it was just such an interesting perspective of how judgmental people are, how people view you, how you really care about how other people view you and stuff like that. So it was a great exercise just to do, smack down in Manhattan, dressed as Daniel, and it was interesting.
Yeah, and with some of the more disturbing and potentially violent aspects of this movie, was it hard to shake the character off when you needed to?
No, I think that it was, after you're done, came back to LA and changed the hair and the wardrobe and everything.
Back to Patrick.
But the movie was really fun, and I think that's something that we did, that Adam, the director, and me worked on, was we took out a lot of dialogue from the script and from the overall project, and we wanted to make a lot of the Daniel character just being kind of menacing with facial expressions and kind of always being on the corner and shoulder of Luke and different parts of that. So we really worked on trying to find it, to make it original and different, but we had a great time filming it, and I think it wasn't hard to shake off after.
Well, you can definitely see how much the visual elements play a role just in the trailer and some of the clips alone, for sure.
Yeah, the visuals of the movie, the cinematographer, the DP, this guy Lyle Vincent, and he had just worked on a movie that was getting crazy amount of publicity and accolades, which was Thoroughbreds. And,
oh, yeah.
I had just seen that, and I loved the movie, and I loved all the different colors and the photography of it. So I was super excited to work with him, and he's worked on so many movies since. He's a genius. And again, they made this movie really original with kind of putting the colors of red and purple throughout everything, and he was just awesome to work with.
Yeah, and some of the themes do harken back to an example like Fight Club, alter egos,
right,
mental illness. But how does this story touch on those themes for a new generation, the younger millennials?
I think that it is a little different because it's a young teenager. It's a kid that's 20 that's going through all this, and that's something that is, unfortunately, is happening today in society more and more and more. And we're seeing it in, cases where people are, describing, increased levels of depression, increased levels of anxiety in America, increased levels of suicide. We've seen terrible, terrible situations with, shootings and stuff like that, all happening with young men. So I think that this is a movie that touches on those subjects, something that America as a whole, we don't love to talk about the idea of mental health, or starting with that. We like to go to other factors of why these things are happening. But I think that it's just essential that we bring up, mental health and what's going on with young men and toxic masculinity. And I think that that's one of the reasons that makes this so unique, that it's coming out today and so important. Because a lot of young men, they're not vulnerable, and they're not, open and wanting to talk about this issue as much.
Yeah, so hopefully this starts a really important conversation.
Yeah, I hope so. I know that this is a smaller film, but it's, any way you can bring these issues to life and use film as a medium to express that and show the mass audience and the public that this is a topic that needs to be talked about, then I think it's great.
No, absolutely. And the reviews are great. Certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, so congrats on that.
Thank you. It's crazy to, I was just talking about this earlier. It's like, when we filmed this, and I didn't know anything how it was going to turn out. You never really do. And then we went to South by Southwest, and I remember we woke up the next morning, we went out for breakfast, and they were like, "Oh my God, it's getting such great reviews," and I was like, "Oh my God, that's awesome." And the audience that really loves genre film, psychological thrillers are loving it, and it's, like you said, has 90% on Rotten Tomatoes and won all these awards at South by Southwest and these other festivals. So it's crazy, but it's great.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And coming out on December 6th. It's
Yes.
not what you would think of as a typical holiday season
Oh, it's
movie.
Perfect for end of Thanksgiving, right into Christmas, the jolly spirit.
Yeah.
No, I know it's kind of an interesting time, but as people go into the holidays and they have time off from work and they're back with their families, our hopes are that when this film is it's only in 15, 20 theaters and then it goes on demand everywhere, that people have the time to go and watch it and will watch it. But yeah, December 6th, an interesting date.